Good morning, Fairhill Church. I'm Ceci Taura. I'm a covenant partner, and I volunteer with Get Services. Today's scriptures are found in 1 Timothy 4, 7 and 8, Ephesians 5, 15 and 16, and Proverbs 24, 30 to 34. Have nothing to do with irreverent, silly myths. Rather, train yourselves for godliness. For while bodily training is of some value, godliness is of value in every way, as it holds promise for the present life and also for the life to come. And now Ephesians 5, 15 and 16. Look carefully then how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise, making the best use of the time, because the days are evil. And finally, Proverbs 24, 30 through 34. I passed by the field of a sluggard, by the vineyard of a man lacking sense, and behold, it was all overgrown with thorns. The ground was covered with nettles, and its stone wall was broken down. Then I saw and considered. I looked and received instruction. A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty will come upon you like a robber, and want like an armed man. This is God's word. You may be seated.
So I want you to think about this last week and think about the stressors of your life, really the things that cause you the most stress. I know that's not a fun thing, little exercise to have right here at the beginning of the sermon, but just think about that for a moment. I would wager, not all of them, but lots of them had to do with two big parts of your life, your time and your money. Right? That is you looked and maybe you were stuck in traffic this week and you were late for an appointment. You're feeling all anxious and sweaty, right? You're like, oh my gosh, or you're looking at a homework assignment or a project you have to do at work and you realize that it's far bigger than you thought and there's no way you can get it done in the amount of time that's been allotted. Or you realize maybe you entered something into your checkbook wrong and now you find yourself having less money than you thought, and how are you going to pay that bill? In other words, you look at, say, your financial obligations and the amount of money you have to fulfill those obligations, there's a gap, isn't there, for a lot of us? Or you look at your time obligations and how much time you have, and there's a gap, and it's that gap that causes the stress. It's the gap that causes the anxiety. Now, we're in a series on the spiritual disciplines. And the reason we're going to spend a couple of weeks talking about your time and money, and here's why. Right? What are we saying about spiritual disciplines? We're not saying, hey, we just want to live more disciplined lives for the sake of being more disciplined. What we're saying is we want to discover what it means to train for godliness, how it is that we can become more Christ-like, how it is that we follow our lives, follow His life, and we become more holy. But there's no way we're going to do that if we don't see how in the world the Christian life intersects with these two massive areas of our life, our time and our money. Our real life where most of us live, right? And so I want to talk about the stewardship of time this week and the stewardship of money next week. These two big ideas, these two big things that we need to know how they intersect with our lives. But let's talk about stewardship for a moment. What is stewardship, right? It's not really a term we use a whole lot, but let me see if I can frame it up for you and help us kind of get our minds around the idea of stewardship. In Matthew chapter 25, we didn't read it this morning, but it's a very familiar parable that a lot of you will know. It's the parable that Jesus tells. It's called the parable of the talents. Not like talents as in skill. A talent was actually a lot of money, and it's about a king who says, I'm going to basically hire 3 investment managers, okay? This is what some of you do, right? You manage other people's money. So I'm going to hire these 3 investment managers, and I'm going to give one of them 5 talents, a whole lot of money, another one 2 talents, and the other one 1 talent. Now you guys go out and let's see what you can do with my money. And I'm going to come back and you're going to have to give an account. So he comes back, he goes away, comes back, he calls them before him and he looks at the guy with 5 and he says, Master, I took your money, I invested it, and now here's another 5, 100% return. He goes to the one with 2. He says, Master, I invested yours and doubled it. 100% return again. And then he looks at the one. He says to those 2 guys, well done. You did exactly what I wanted. Now I've entrusted you with little, and now I'm going to trust you with more. I'm going to give you more. To the last one, he looks and says, how about you? And he says, well, you gave me 1, and I was so afraid of you. I didn't really do it, and I stuck it in a mattress, essentially. And I got nothing. I made 0. And the master says, you wicked servant, right? You knew what I was like, and you didn't do any of that. And it says he casts him into outer darkness. Now, that's where our analogy breaks down, because you're like, I've never heard of that happening to an investment manager, right? Like, I was so frightened, I got cast into outer darkness. What's happening there? What is Jesus doing? Well, you need to know that this is a parable not so much about managing money. It's a parable about Christ's return. Will he find people presently faithful with what he's called them to do, and that leading to future reward? Okay, so that's kind of the idea. But it isn't a coincidence that Jesus casts that faithfulness in the workplace. In the very place where you make the most money and spend the most time. This he's showing you, this is intersecting, the faith is intersecting with real life. Is there faithfulness there? And so he's describing, in some ways, we get a glimpse into what a steward is. Okay, we start to wrestle with this understanding stewardship. Now you understand when you add the word ship on the end of a word, right, what you're saying is the quality of that thing. A leadership, the quality of a leader. Friendship, the quality of a friend. Stewardship, the quality of stewarding. So that begs the question, what's a steward, right? What is a steward? Well, in simple terms, it's simply a manager. It's somebody who manages the property, the resources of someone else for their benefit, right? You give money to a money manager, you're saying, hey, this is my money, right? Yeah, I'm going to pay you some sort of fee, but really you're doing this for my benefit. That's what a steward is, watching over the property, managing that property for another. Paul's going to say in 1 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 2, that here's what has to be true of a steward. They must be found faithful. They faithfully manage the resources that they've been given. Now, the filter, the lens, Christian, through which we see all of life is what? We are stewards. We might say, mere managers. There is nothing. Paul's going to say to the Corinthians, what do you have that you have not received? And if you've received it, why do you act like you haven't received it? Like it's just yours. Christian, you understand, you own nothing. You have been bought with a price. Everything you have, every dime in your bank account, every resource at your disposal, every minute of your day belongs ultimately to God. It's His. He owns you. You're His servant. We are mere stewards. We are managers of what we've been given. So, the Bible's going to say we must steward things well, and especially our time, okay? We are called to actually steward our time. Why? Now look, we could go all the way back. This could have been lesson 1, because of course, this has an implication for every spiritual discipline we're talking about. If I can't steward my time, I will fail. Donald Whitney says this, godliness is the result of a biblically disciplined life. But at the heart of a disciplined spiritual life is the disciplined use of time. Right? I don't get very far in spiritual disciplines if I'm not going to discipline my time. God calls me to be disciplined with the time that He gives me. Why? Well, let me give you 5 reasons you ought to be a really good steward of your time. Okay? A good manager of the time that God has given you. Number 1, because time is the most precious commodity, if I can say it that way, resource that you have. You have no more precious resource than your time. You know this? Because your time determines your life. The way you spend your time is the way you spend your life. And once you spend time, you can't take it back, right? There's no way to recycle it. It's over. you spend it, it can't be retrieved. Think about this. You can run out of money and still have time. You can run out of friends and still have time. You can run out of work and still have time. But you can't, once you run out of time, your life is over. How you spend your time is your life. Right? That's what life is made up of, the way you spend your time. You can make more friends, you can make more money, you can take more trips, you can have more jobs, you could have more children, but you cannot have more time. Time is utterly inflexible. You get a set amount of time, and that's all. I hope you know this, Christian especially. Listen to Job, chapter 14. Man's days are determined. You, God, have decreed the number of his months and have set limits he cannot exceed. Jesus is going to say, you can worry all you want, but you will not add to your life by, he uses this word cubit. It's the idea of 18 inches. You can sprint towards the finish line, dive to try to get 18 more inches. You will die exactly when God has determined. You get not one more second than what God has determined you get. It is utterly inflexible. Your time is the most precious. You can overspend and overeat and overestimate and overguess and overprescribe and overregulate and overmedicate and overachieve and overheat. You cannot overlive. That's not possible. Y'all know this, right? You cannot overlive. Moses is going to say in Psalm 90, teach us to number our days, Lord, that we may gain a heart of wisdom. Now look at this, right? Teach us to number our days that we may gain a heart of wisdom. In other words, just understanding that your days are numbered apparently will add to the reservoir of wisdom in your life. Because it is the most precious resource. Knowing your time is limited. Knowing your time is you have a certain finite amount. It's the most precious resource you have will add to wisdom. Now, how many of you remember the days, those of you that have children, remember the days when you didn't have kids? Right? Those of you who are married, remember the days when you weren't married? Have you ever said something like this? Where did the time go? Where did the time go? What's the answer to the question, where did the time go? Away. Always away. It never comes back. It's just away. What are we asking, by the way, when we say, where did the time go? What do we really, underneath that, we're saying, where did my life go? Time and life, right? We're asking, where did my life go? Because I can never retrieve it. And so Paul, we had you look at Ephesians chapter 5 says, look, make the best use of the time because the days are evil. Ephesians chapter 5. Okay, in other words, do you recognize that there are evil forces at work? They're not going to show up in your bedroom as demons and that, you know what, all they want to do is make you squander your time. That's mission accomplished. If I can get you to waste your time, then I've done it. Right? You understand there are algorithms written to help you in your quest to squander time. You can dive deeper and deeper into a cesspool of squandered time, and there's an evil force that would love you to do nothing more than that. So Paul counters that, saying, make the best use of the time. Don't squander the time. Your time is the most precious resource you have. That's the first thing. The second thing, and these are all going to be sort of related, because what I want to do is sort of walk around this issue of time and just sort of say this in different ways. Number two is your time is limited. Why do we have to steward our time well? Because your time is limited. Okay? Yes, it's like, in other words, we say things, right? Oh, I'm on vacation. I have all the time in the world. Okay, that's fine. We all know what that means. We know we don't mean that literally, right? Because that's not true. I don't have all the time in the world. That is an illusion. Now, we live like that, but time is not an inexhaustible resource. It is a finite, limited resource. James chapter 4, you are a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes. Right? You are, like the writer of Ecclesiastes is going to say, you're a vapor. This is what life is. It's a vapor. It's the idea of a breath. Go outside on a cold day, breathe. How long does that fog from your mouth stick around? It's almost gone within, a fraction of a second. He's saying in the grand scheme of things, this is your life. It is limited. It's not inexhaustible. You don't have all the time in the world. Like look, think, some of you who are older, think about how fast the last 10 years went. Now when you think of it as like 10 years, that feels like a decade. That's a long time. What if you think about it as 120 months? Feels a little bit different, doesn't it? It's like, wow, that really went. My dad died 11 years ago this May. 126 or so months. And that got me thinking. When he died, I sat down and was asked to do his funeral and speak at his funeral. And one of the things that I thought about is this. I went to Psalm 90. I went to a place like James 4. Went to Job 14. And I saw this theme that my dad's days were numbered before he ever breathed the breath. God knew. He knew the beginning. He knew the end. Here's your first day. Here's your last day. And he knows it for you and he knows it for me. So here's what I did. It got me to thinking, and I kind of nerded out on this for a little bit. I thought, okay, how long did my dad live? So I did some research and I kind of calculated my dad's days. My dad lived for 27,306 days. And the Bible says that number of days was determined before he was ever born. My dad lived 27,000. I thought, okay, I wonder how that sort of works with my grandparents. My grandparents lived anywhere between 28,000 all the way up to one that seemed like she lived forever, 34,000 days. The average for my family is about 29,800, just shy of 30,000. Okay, I know I'm getting kind of mathematic with you. Just listen, just hang with me for a second. Today, I have lived 20,440 days. Now, if I just take the national average, I have a little bit over 8,000 days left. When I preached my dad's funeral, I had about 13,500 left. Apparently, talking like this will make you wise. Because you have to consider, I'm finite, right? My days are numbered, and they really are. Have you considered this, right? There is a finite, your time is limited. And for me to look at that through the lens of my father and realize it's been 10 years since my dad died. I've just spent 3,650 of those days already. Your time is limited. That's why you should steward your time. But number 3, time can be redeemed. It just can't be regained. Okay, now I want to get to the redemption part in the end, but hear me. Some of your translations of Ephesians 5 has Paul saying, redeem the time. I love that. It's a great translation. Redeem the time because the days are evil. So we can redeem, and we'll talk about that in a moment, but we can never regain. You can never get another one, right? I can never get it back, right? So we talk like this. I want to spend time here, and I save time with that device, or I'm going to make up for lost time by going faster. I'm going to buy myself some time by doing this. And we all understand that's all a myth, right? It can't be done. There's no way you can get more time. That's an illusion. I cannot add a page to my calendar. There is not a day that I've ever had that lasted 27 hours. They're all the same. It's fixed, it's finite, it's over. I can never regain any day that I've ever lived. How many of us would love to relive some of our days? How many of us look back and think, man, oh, I wish I had a do-over there? How many of you have grown children now and thinking, what would I have changed? Oh, there's so much that I would have done differently. Time can be redeemed. It can't be regained. This is why it's so important for you to steward your time. How about this? Number 4, time is uncertain. It's just uncertain, right? Proverbs chapter 27 says, do not boast about tomorrow. You don't know what a day may bring. James is going to pick up on this and he says this. He talks about like, hey, some of you, here's how you talk. Tomorrow I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to go off on this, and I'm going to have this business trip, and we're going to do this vacation. And he says, you should not talk like that. You should say, if the Lord wills, I'll do this or that. Now, he's not trying to create sort of religious prigs who just like, no, don't say that. You should say it this way. He's trying to get us to wake up and go, this is how we just think. I've got this plan. I'm doing this. Some of our kind of, after we get done talking about the weather with each other, then, hey, what are you doing this week? I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm doing this, right? And we're so confident in how we say that. Let's do something really happy. In every second, 2 people die. In a minute, 120 people die. During this sermon, something like 5,000 people will die. And I guarantee you, many of them are younger than lots of you. And many of them would say, I never realized I was in my last hour of life. Why? Because time is not certain. See, I hope, there's some good stuff that came out of COVID. I know we don't like to think about this, but how many of us had to sort of side with James and we're like, yeah, I'm doing this. Oh yeah, COVID. No, can't do that. If the Lord wills, I'll do that. If the Lord stops this in its track, I'll do that, right? But we saw it just plain as day. My time is uncertain. You have no guarantee that tomorrow will happen. There will be people in this room who may be surprised by the shortness of life even this year. I don't say this to be a downer. I don't say this to be like, oh my gosh, thank you for coming to church today. Hear me. The Bible says it's really good for us to know this. It's really important that we think and talk like this. And number 5, time tends to drift rather than run away, doesn't it? It just drifts away. It doesn't just flow away like, wow, it's just suddenly gone, right? This is why I wanted you in Proverbs. And we're going to get to Proverbs 24 in a moment. But in the Proverbs, you're going to see, and it's in Proverbs 24 as well, you see this sluggard, right? The Proverbs are going to name people like the wise person or the foolish youth or the fool or whatever. But there's another one, and his name is sluggard. And a sluggard is what? Again, not a word we use a whole lot. A sluggard is somebody who simply is lazy and squanders their time. Right? Just does not use the time well. And what they do is they come up with incredible excuses to justify their sluggardliness, their laziness, their slothfulness. So in Proverbs chapter 26, it says this, the sluggard says, there's a lion in the road, there's a lion in the streets. As the door turns on its hinges, so does the sluggard on his bed. What in the world is being said there? Here's what the sluggard does. What's the chance that tomorrow morning you wake up and there's a lion in your backyard? Could it happen? Sure, I suppose. Circus in town and, the train spills over and there's a lion in your backyard, right? Something crazy like that could happen. Is it anywhere near likely. No, that's the whole point of Proverbs 26. He takes this most unlikeliest of things and says, for that reason, I'm going to stay home, and just turns over and goes to sleep. And he turns over and he uses that for the justification of him staying home. These bizarre excuses. Here's why I can't be diligent. Here's why I can't be disciplined. This remote possibility is keeping him. What does he do? He likes sleep more than godliness. And what happens is that time drifts away from him, one nap at a time. One night of sleep at a time. And so look at Proverbs 26. Proverbs 26, look at verse 30. Ceci read it just a moment ago. But look at this. Just ponder this passage with me for a second. I passed by the field of a sluggard, by the vineyard of a man lacking sense. And behold, it was overgrown with thorns, and the ground was covered with nettles, and its stone wall was broken down. Okay, the vineyard, this is the means of your existence. This is an agrarian society, right? I passed by the business of a sluggard. I passed by the employment place of a sluggard, whatever. I mean, this is the idea. Then I saw and considered it. I looked and received instruction. I'll stop there just for a second and let's go here. Here's a man who's saying, I let these object lessons just make it past my eyes. I saw it, but I considered it. I thought on it. I looked and I saw, and I received instruction from what I was seeing. And what did I see? Here's his lesson. A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty will come upon you like a robber, and want like an armed man. I remember reading this passage when I was in my early 20s and thinking to myself, dear God, please never let this happen to me. Please, just a little. See, and this is what I'm saying. It doesn't run away. It drifts away. Just a little here, a little there, and suddenly where do you find yourself? Your lives ruined. But by just a little drift here and there. See, it's drifting. It's not gushing. It's not running towards that, right? See, young people, hear me. I know you cannot possibly conceive of time slipping away. It feels like you have forever. And you know what God does for you? The same thing he does for me and all of us. He gives us these gracious little milestones in our life called decades, where you look and you go, man, I'm not a teenager anymore. That's weird. I feels like just yesterday I was in my 20s. Boy, remember the 30s? Oh, I was in such great shape when I was in my 40s. And on it goes. Now, let me just tell you something. That's a mercy of God. That's the mercy of God to help you go, hey, you are time bound. Do you know this? Your days are limited. Your days are numbered, right? And so don't let it drift away from you. See, you feel like you have all the time in the world. You can't even conceive of you being old unless you use that, I don't know, that thing they used to have on cameras, right? That would show you what you'd look like as an old person, right? So you squander time. You just squander it. And listen to me. If we squandered money the way nearly all of us squander time, people would think you were crazy. But what are you doing? I mean, you're just like burning money and throwing it in the trash. But we can't see it. And it feels so innocent. See, it's the most important. Time can buy you money. Money will never buy you time. That's why it's so precious. So let me see. I want to just sort of draw some lessons from a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest. And what are the sort of lessons around time that I think the Bible would want us to know? Okay, let me give you three. Lesson number one, there is a cumulative value to investing small amounts of time in certain activities. Okay, there is. There is. I'm going to get to the opposite of this in a moment, but just recognize this. There really is a cumulative benefit. A few minutes of exercise every day has cumulative benefits, right? The disciplined intake of food has cumulative benefits, and they can be very small. It's not the guy who goes out and lifts once. It's not the gal who runs once and, wow, that was exhausting. It's the one who just does a small thing consistently, just every day. Do you know this? There is no measurable benefit from a single session of a good thing. There is no measurable benefit from doing a good thing only once. And this applies to all your life. You may say, it's really good. A good thing would be sitting down with my family at a meal. That's good. You do it once, it's nothing. It's the consistency that matters, doesn't it? Date nights with your spouse, it's not the one date. It's the consistency. It's a small thing. It's praying with your kids. It's not that you did it one time and knelt beside their bed at night. It's the consistency of that. It's not that you just came to church one time or went to a growth group or went to a class or served one time. It's the consistent adding up. That's the cumulative value. There is little to almost zero benefit from trying to do a good thing just one time. It's long-term consistency that matters. Listen, you stack up day, month, and year of doing that little thing over and over and over again, and you will see a massive, massive value. I told you almost day one, when it comes to these spiritual disciplines, right, here's what it's going to feel like. It's going to feel like every day you put a drop in the bucket. Just a drop. Just a drop. What's the value of one drop at the bottom of a bucket? Almost nothing. What's the value of stacking up those drops for 10 years, for 20 years, for 30 years? Oh, now I'm seeing it. So this is what we're called to. This is the idea. Okay, so that's the first thing. There's a cumulative value to investing small amounts of time in certain activities. Number two, kind of on the opposite side of this, there are rarely immediate consequences for a single act of neglect. Right? There's just not. If you neglect something one time, nobody's going to notice. You won't even notice. Right? Let's just put it in the physical realm, because I think most of us get this. Right? We can relate to our own physical bodies in ways that maybe we're trying to conceive of in our spiritual life. Look, if I neglect exercise for one day, who cares? If, as I am wont to do, I take one day, a week, or a month and just pig out on ice cream, it's probably not going to affect me that much. It's not the single act, right? The single act of neglect. If I skip my Bible reading one time, if I skip Sunday morning and sleep in one time, if I don't go to class or growth group one week, man, here's the deal. Life goes on, and very few of us see any detrimental effect of a single act of neglect, right? We just don't. So what does that do to you? It starts to sort of convince you that, okay, that wasn't that bad, and just one more and just one more. There are rarely consequences for these singular acts of neglect. But, number three, neglect has a cumulative value. Just like these small acts of certain activities, so neglect has a cumulative effect. See, I can neglect my health for a day. I can neglect it for a week, a month. And even if all that, I can still probably get back on track. Now stack that up to a year. Stack that up and make it 5 years. Now stack it up and make it 10 years. And what do I have? I have drifted so far from where I was. I heard Paul Tripp talking one time where he said he was looking back, and I think he realized he's in his 50s, I think, and he looked back, 25 years. He's in his 20s, he's in the prime of his life, and he's like, I had gained something like 40 or 50 pounds. And he said, and I realized that didn't happen because of a meal. And he said, I had to completely change my relationship with food. Now, look, I'm saying that I think you can see it with this. It is not the single act of neglect. It is how it accumulates over time. None of this happens overnight. It is years worth of drift. Listen, spiritual disciplines feel really small. It's just reading my Bible one time, and it's just praying for a few minutes, and it's just meditating, and it's just trying to evangelize, or whatever it is we're talking about, journaling or solitude, all the things we'll talk about. It's just a little bit more of my money for me, and I begin to neglect those things, and I stack them up, and the drift happens slowly, and then I find myself shipwrecked. Very few people get in the ship of their life and steer it towards the rocks and open the sail and go as fast as I can. What do? They unmoor themselves and they just drift. And then they find themselves in the rocks. And then they look at their life and say, how did I get here? You wake up one morning and think, how am I so far from God? It wasn't one Sunday. It was how easy that one Sunday was that led to a next, led to the next time, right? I do that with prayer. I do that with my Bible. I do that with fellowship. I do that with my time. There is a cumulative effect to daily incremental decisions. See, look, but I hope you see the opposite of this. Little daily incremental decisions have a massive effect. They can have a massive effect negatively. They can have a massive effect positively. See, okay, so where's the hope in all this? Like, man, Chris, I look back on my life, I've just squandered my time. To which I'd say, welcome to Squanderers Anonymous. Right? I just don't know anybody that goes, man, I've licked this. I don't know anybody that lives without regret. I don't know anybody that doesn't have a day they want to, there's no do-overs in my life. I don't know anybody who looks and says, I have spent my time perfectly. I just don't know of that person. Well, I do. His name's Jesus. And he's the one we serve. And listen, if I look at my life and then I look and say, hey, the gospel, like I'm free from condemnation and guilt and shame because of what Jesus has done for me. And I don't have to live under the burden of that, but it sets me free now to serve him. And I can go to places like Philippians chapter 3, forgetting what lies behind and straining forward to what lies ahead. I strive for that. You know what I want to say to you? If you're feeling regret and you look back, I want to say, first of all, welcome. You're in really, really good company. But I'd also say this, you're here today and you're breathing. And you know what that means? You have more time. You don't have to keep living the way that you're living. Man, I love Lamentations 3. I love this passage so much, and we sing it all the time. It shows up little lyrics in our Bibles. But listen to right before the part that you all know. Remember my affliction and my wanderings, talking to God. The things that have caused me to wander away from you, God. The wormwood and the gall, the bitter things of my life. My soul continually remembers it and is bowed down within me. Do you hear the picture he's saying? How many of us look and remember all these things? We call it to mind all the time. I've blown it this way, I've blown it that way, I've failed, I've squandered, I've done all those things. But then, But this I call to mind. And therefore I have hope. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. The Lord is my portion, says my soul. Therefore, I will hope in him. That's our hope. We're here today. We know there's regrets in the past, but we can say, Father, it's in you I hope, right? You're the one. You're the one who has my future. You're the one. And I can live differently today because I belong to you and your mercies are new. And I don't sit every day trying to dig myself out from under deeper and deeper pools of just the rot and filth of my life or the neglect of my life. Today can be a new day. See, so here's what I'm going to say to you. Maybe you're here today and you realize, man, my days are numbered. And I am not in fellowship with God at all. I have squandered my life. I have done what I want to do. And in truth be told, I was sort of waiting until the very end and then I'm going to make things right with God. Hear me, that'll never happen. Your time is limited. Your time is uncertain. You never know when that's going to happen. And the Bible says today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your heart against him. Now is the acceptable time. Today is the day of salvation. But then there's others in here that would say, okay, I'm a Christian, but I've squandered it. All right then, for you, the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They're new today. That you will forget what lies behind and you will strain forward to what lies ahead. Let me pray for us. Father, we thank you. We thank you that our time is in your hands. We thank you that you love us and that you remind us and you help us to see and take stock of these truths, Lord. Maybe I have 8,000 some odd days. Maybe I don't. Maybe some in here would look and say, man, I have tens of thousands of days. But God, none of us know. Teach us. Teach us to number our days. Help us to remember that our time is in your hands, not ours. Wake us up to this reality, God, that we might be people who steward this precious gift that you've given us of time. Steward it for your glory and for your fame. Steward it in such a way that when you return, we are so excited to see you again. We long for your appearing because we're not ashamed. So help us, God. And Lord, I pray for those that are here today and say, man, I've squandered my life to this point in the sense that I'm just now realizing my need for Jesus. I'm just now realizing I am so far alienated. And if I were to die and my time was over, I would be lost forever. Forever. I can never regain it. God, I just pray today that would sober people. They would wake up and they'd throw themselves at the mercy of God and cry and fly to Jesus. Save me. And that, Lord, you'd save them. They would confess their sin. They'd turn from their sin. They'd repent of that sin and they'd put their faith in Jesus for the forgiveness of their sins, for their justification, to make them right with God. Lord, I'm powerless to cause any of these things to happen. I just pray that you would work in our hearts to make that happen, we pray. We love you, we thank you, and we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.